My name is Brenda, and the night my family mocked me at Christmas was the night I stopped being invisible. It was supposed to be simple. I had wrapped the gift with care, smoothing the paper, tying the ribbon twice so it would sit straight. A small gesture, modest but thoughtful. I had spent days baking cookies, cleaning my tiny apartment, and saving what little I could from my paycheck to afford it. Christmas had always been sacred to me. My late father made it so, stringing lights across every corner of our old house, filling it with music and warmth. He used to say, "Christmas is never about the size of the gift, Brenda. It's about the size of the heart." I carried those words with me like a compass, but my family had forgotten them. The living room glittered with ornaments and wealth. My mother's house was grand, every corner dripping with garlands, crystal glasses on polished oak tables. My brother and sister, both married to wealthy partners, had gifts stacked so high they looked like a store display. Watches, jewelry, designer bags. Each unwrapped box sparked applause and laughter. When my turn came, I handed my neatly wrapped box to my mother. She looked at it as though it were already disappointing. With a forced smile, she peeled back the paper and revealed a cashmere scarf in her favorite shade of deep green. I had chosen it carefully, imagining it with the coat she wore every winter. For a moment silence fell. Then my sister Veronica smirked. "A scarf? Really, Brenda? After everything Mom's done for you?" My brother chuckled, sipping his wine. "Did you grab it from the bargain bin? It looks cheap." Laughter rippled through the room. Even Daniel, my sister's husband, joined in. My mother held the scarf delicately, as though it might stain her fingers. "It's thoughtful, dear," she said in a tone that carried no warmth. "But you could have tried harder. Christmas is once a year." The blood drained from my face. My heart pounded in my ears. They laughed openly, passing the scarf around like a joke, while my cheeks burned hot with shame. I wanted to shout, to remind them of the nights I stayed to babysit their children for free, the times I quietly paid their overdue bills, the sacrifices no one ever thanked me for. I wanted to tell them the scarf had cost me hours of overtime, every cent of my spare savings. But I didn't. I sat in silence, my hands clenched in my lap, my eyes fixed on the tree lights that blurred into stars. They had no idea who I was anymore. They had no idea what I carried, because while they mocked me, they didn't know the truth. My father had left me more than memories. He had left me careful investments, accounts I had nurtured quietly for years, never flaunting, never wasting on vanity. To them, I was still the poor younger sister, the one with nothing. But in reality, my net worth had grown past $3 million. I could have bought each of them 10 scarves, 10 watches, even 10 houses if I wanted. But I hadn't. Because money was never about show to me, it was about security, about patience, about waiting for the right moment. And that night, as their laughter echoed around me, something inside me shifted. I realized I had been patient long enough. I didn't defend myself. I let them laugh. I let them believe I was still the smallest in the room. Because deep down, I knew this would not end with my shame. It would end with their shock. And so while they sipped champagne and mocked my little box, I whispered silently to myself, "Next Christmas it will not be me they laugh at. It will be them." The morning after Christmas the house was quiet, but inside me the storm still raged. I replayed their laughter over and over, each word slicing deeper. A burden. Cheap. Clearance rack. My scarf still lay abandoned on the sofa, forgotten under piles of torn wrapping paper and glittering boxes. I had barely slept, but I forced myself to the kitchen. The smell of coffee couldn't soften the sharp memory of last night. My mother breezed in, perfectly dressed as if the cruelty of the evening had never happened. "Morning, Brenda," she said, her tone clipped. "Next year, don't trouble yourself. It's embarrassing when the gifts are small." The words fell like stones. I gripped the counter. It wasn't about size. It was thoughtful. She didn't meet my eyes. Thoughtful doesn't pay for appearances. Veronica's husband gave me a watch. Your brother bought me a coat. You gave me a scarf. Her lips tightened. You'll understand when you grow up. I was 34 years old. And still in her eyes I was the child who hadn't measured up. Later that day, I overheard Veronica talking to Daniel in the foyer. "Honestly, I don't know why Mom even invites her. Brenda adds nothing. She has no career, no husband, no money. She clings to us because she has nowhere else to go. Daniel laughed, his deep voice carrying. I've seen her apartment. It's pathetic. I don't know how she manages to live there. She'll never be more than background. I froze in the hallway, the air rushing out of my lungs. Background. That was how they saw me. A shadow. A ghost. Someone who didn't matter. I wanted to scream that I had supported myself for years, that I had built quiet savings, that I had learned to live without help. But I didn't. I bit down on my tongue until it bled. That evening, as the family gathered again for leftovers and laughter, I sat silently by the fire. Their voices blurred together, careless and cruel. And then I caught the sentence that changed everything. We'll have to decide what to do with Mom's estate eventually, my brother said, pouring himself another drink. Obviously Veronica and I will manage it. Brenda won't be able to contribute. She barely keeps herself afloat. My chest tightened. They weren't just mocking me. They were already planning to cut me out of the family legacy entirely. Veronica chimed in. Of course. Mom can't trust her with anything important. She'd probably sell it for pennies just to survive. My mother said nothing. She just nodded, sipping her wine, as if the decision was already made. I stared into the fire, the flames reflecting in my eyes. They thought I had nothing. They thought I would accept crumbs, grateful just to sit in their presence. They thought I was powerless. But the truth was already locked away, sealed in folders at the bank. Investments my father had left me. Accounts I had grown. $3 million quietly waiting. And as I sat there, silent among the people who claimed to be my family, I understood something clearly for the first time. They had mocked me not just because they thought I was poor, but because they thought I was powerless. To them, money meant dominance. Applause. Control. They couldn't imagine I might be wealthier, stronger, more prepared than any of them. And that would be their downfall. I rose quietly, excused myself, and slipped into the cold night air. Snow crunched under my boots as I walked to my car, my breath rising like smoke. The scarf I had given still lay forgotten inside, proof of their contempt. I rested my hands on the steering wheel, staring through the windshield at the glowing house. Inside were people who believed I was nothing. But soon they would learn the truth. Because that night I made a decision. I would not defend myself with words. I would defend myself with evidence. And when the time came, I would reveal who I truly was, one page, one number, one deed at a time. The decision settled into me like iron. If my family saw me as powerless, then I would show them the power of truth. But power without proof is just noise. And I refused to be dismissed as noise. So I began building. Quietly. Patiently. Without a word to anyone. The first step was the will my father had left. After he passed, the family assumed everything had gone to my mother, with Veronica and my brother next in line. They forgot, or perhaps ignored, that my father trusted me. He had always said, Brenda, you're the one who listens. You're the one who remembers. At the bank, I requested certified copies of the will and the related investment accounts. The clerk, an older man who had known my father, smiled kindly. He prepared well. You were smart to leave things untouched all these years. I nodded, signing the forms, though my hands trembled. When the envelopes arrived a week later, thick with stamp papers, I spread them across my kitchen table. They bore my name. Investments. Certificates. Real estate trusts. All mine. The balances stunned even me. Over $3 million, carefully grown through interest and patient decisions. My father's wisdom, paired with my restraint, had built something formidable. Next came evidence of my independence. I dug out tax returns, pay stubs, receipts, years of proving I supported myself without leaning on anyone. While they had laughed about me barely surviving, I had quietly paid every bill on time, never missing a rent check, never defaulting on a loan. The paperwork showed stability, discipline, strength. Still, I needed more than money. I needed their own words. So I began to document. I kept a journal recording the exact phrases they used that night. Veronica's smirk. Brenda adds nothing. My brother's sneer. She barely keeps herself afloat. My mother's dismissive tone. You'll understand when you grow up. Every sentence became ink on paper, dated, time-stamped. The following weekend I visited my neighbor Clara, who had known me since childhood. Over tea, I shared a sliver of the truth. They think I have nothing, I whispered. Clara shook her head. I heard Veronica last summer out in the yard. She said you'd end up depending on her forever. She laughed like it was already decided. I asked Clara if she'd be willing to write a statement, and she did, careful, honest words on lined paper. Another piece of the puzzle. At night, when silence filled my apartment, I scanned every document, saving copies to encrypted drives and printing duplicates to hide in separate places. One folder at home, one in a safety deposit box, one with Clara for safekeeping. Meanwhile, I began watching my family more closely. Veronica's social media overflowed with pictures of her luxury bags, captions boasting of deserved gifts from her husband. My brother posted about business ventures, always hinting at money that never seemed to last. And my mother, her comments dripped with pride for them, while my name was never mentioned. Their greed was written across their lives like ink too bold to miss. The turning point came when I intercepted a conversation by accident. Veronica called me, her voice falsely sweet. Brenda, we're talking about selling Dad's old property by the lake. It's just too much for Mom to manage. Of course it's family business. You wouldn't understand the paperwork, but don't worry, we'll handle it. I froze. That property was in my father's trust, which meant it was legally mine. She didn't know I had the documents proving it. I played along, keeping my voice light. Of course, Veronica. You know best. But inside, my resolve sharpened. They were already moving pieces on the board, unaware that the board itself belonged to me. That night, I placed the lake property deed on top of my binder and stared at it under the lamplight. My father's signature, my name. It was proof not even Veronica's arrogance could erase. As days turned into weeks, my evidence grew into a fortress. Bank papers, legal deeds, testimonies, receipts, screenshots. Each piece a stone stacked carefully on top of another. And still I kept silent. To my family, I was still the quiet sister, the poor relative with nothing to offer. I let them laugh, let them whisper, let them plan. Because the longer they underestimated me, the more powerful the reveal would be. And then one evening an envelope slipped under my apartment door. No return address, only my name scrawled across the front. Inside was a printed page. A lawyer's draft dividing my father's estate. My name wasn't even mentioned. They had already begun writing me out. The envelope with my name missing from the estate draft shook me to the core. It was no longer just whispers, no longer cruel laughter over a scarf. It was a plan. They were preparing to erase me not just from Christmas, but from the family's very history. I sat at my kitchen table with the document in my hands, the lamplight turning the paper yellow at the edges. My pulse hammered. If I confronted them now, they would deny it, dismiss me, and tighten their plans behind closed doors. I needed more than anger. I needed allies. The first person I turned to was Clara, my neighbor and lifelong friend. She had already given me a statement about Veronica's cruel words, but I needed more than sympathy. I needed strategy. That night I knocked on her door, the winter wind cutting through my coat. She ushered me inside, the warmth of her home wrapping around me. I laid out the envelope, the deeds, the investment papers, the receipts. Her eyes widened as the story unfolded. Brenda, she whispered, you're sitting on a fortune. They mocked you because they think you're powerless. But you're not. You have the truth. I nodded, tears burning at the edges of my vision. I can't do this alone. They're planning to strip me of everything. I need someone who knows how to fight. Clara leaned back, thoughtful. You need a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. Someone who's seen families tear themselves apart and knows where the weak spots are. I know someone. The next morning, she introduced me to Rachel Monroe, an attorney known in town for estate disputes and fraud cases. Rachel's office was small, lined with shelves of leather-bound volumes. She greeted me with a firm handshake, her eyes sharp, her presence steady as stone. Tell me everything, she said. I opened the binders, sliding across bank papers, deeds, the forged estate draft. My voice trembled at first, but as the story spilled out, the mocking at Christmas, the cruel words, the plans to erase me, it grew steadier. Rachel listened without interruption, her pen scratching only to mark key points. When I finished, she closed her notebook with a decisive snap. You've done half my job already. Most people come in with anger but no proof. You brought me receipts, contracts, testimony, and evidence of forgery. This is more than personal cruelty. This is legal fraud. My chest tightened. So I have a chance? Rachel's lips curved into a small, fierce smile. Not just a chance. With timing and patience, we can turn this against them. But you must keep silent for now. If they think you suspect nothing, they'll grow careless. Every careless step gives us more leverage. Her words lit something inside me. The silence that had once felt like shame now became a weapon. Grace, another friend from my father's circle, joined our late-night planning sessions. She remembered how my father trusted me with financial advice when I was younger. He always said you had a steady head, Brenda, she told me. You're proving him right now. Together, the three of us built the framework of the counterattack. Rachel organized the legal side. Injunctions, protective orders, strategies to expose the forgery. Grace kept watch on Veronica's public posts, cataloging her arrogance for evidence. And I gathered, always gathering, printing emails, recording conversations, filing receipts. At home I perfected the mask. When Veronica called, fishing for information about the lake property, I feigned ignorance. I really don't understand all that paperwork, I said lightly. She laughed, confident, and moved on. Each call, each smirk, each word went into my growing timeline. But silence is heavy, and one evening the weight pressed too hard. Clara found me staring at the scarf still lying folded on my couch. What if I fail? I whispered. She pressed my hand firmly. You won't. Because you're not trying to destroy them, Brenda. You're trying to reveal them. That's stronger than revenge. That's justice. Her words steadied me. Still, unease lingered. My mother's approval of the estate draft cut deeper than I let anyone see. She had nodded while they erased me, silently complicit. It hurt more than Veronica's laughter or my brother's smugness. And yet I reminded myself, pain is fuel. I locked away the originals again, copies hidden in 3 separate places. The plan was forming. The evidence was strong. Rachel was sharpening it into a weapon. But just as I began to feel safe, Rachel called me one evening, her voice tense. Brenda, you need to see this. Your brother just filed a petition in court, claiming you're financially unstable and unfit to handle any inheritance. Rachel's words echoed in my ear long after the call ended. My brother had gone to court behind my back, filing a petition to paint me as unstable, unfit, irresponsible. It was clever in its own cruel way. If a judge believed him, then every paper I held, every deed and bank statement would be questioned. My voice would be silenced before it was ever heard. But he had underestimated me. The next morning, I sat in Rachel's office as she spread the petition across her desk. It's weak, she said firmly. He attached no financial evidence, just claims. He's counting on your reputation, on the idea that you're the poor, quiet sister no one takes seriously. He thinks you won't fight back. Grace sat beside me, her hand warm on mine. That's his mistake. Brenda's been fighting in silence for years. Rachel leaned forward. Then it's time to take that silence and turn it into a storm. We began building the counterplan piece by piece. Step 1. Secure my assets. Rachel filed motions to freeze any unauthorized access to my accounts and to formally recognize my ownership of the lake property. With those protective measures in place, my family couldn't make moves without drawing legal attention. Step 2. Dismantle the lies. He claims you're unstable, Rachel explained, but you've kept immaculate records. Every rent check paid, every bill covered, every tax filed. Judges respect order. You don't just have proof, you have patterns. She arranged my documents into binders labeled by year, creating a timeline that would be impossible to dispute. Step 3. Prepare for exposure. You don't just want to win in court, Rachel reminded me. You want them humiliated in the very space where they mocked you. That means timing. We file our strongest evidence just before a major family gathering. They'll walk into their own trap, unaware the ground beneath them has already collapsed. Her words burned in my chest. Exposure. That was what Christmas had been for me. Public shame dressed as laughter. I wanted them to taste it back. At night, Grace and I sat in her living room with stacks of paper around us, cross-referencing everything. Look, she pointed. Veronica bragged online about buying new jewelry on the very day your father's account showed a withdrawal. She's digging into what doesn't belong to her. We printed it, filed it, timestamped it. Another stone in the wall. Meanwhile, I rehearsed my role. At family dinners, I said little, keeping my voice soft, letting them believe I was the same Brenda they had always dismissed. My brother bragged about his new car. Veronica flaunted designer shoes. My mother smiled at them both, her approval shining bright. They thought I was small. They didn't see the fire underneath. Rachel taught me patience. Revenge is not an outburst, she said. It's architecture. You're building a structure so strong that when it collapses on them, there's no way out. The plan grew sharper each day. We would present the deeds, the investments, the notarized will. Clara's testimony would confirm my family's intent to erase me. Grace would stand by me, a steady witness. Rachel would handle the filings with precision. And me? I would remain calm, the quiet shadow until the very moment I stepped into the light. Still doubt crept in at night. I lay awake staring at the scarf folded on my dresser. What if the judge believes them? What if silence turns against me? One evening, Rachel called to check in. She heard the tremor in my voice and cut through it. Brenda, listen. Your father trusted you. He left you the tools and you've honored them. You don't need to shout to win. You need to let the truth speak. And the truth is on your side. Her confidence steadied me. Weeks later, the first hearing date arrived in the mail. It was scheduled for the day after Easter. My family thought they had months to continue weaving their lies. They didn't know Rachel had already filed motions that would unravel every thread. And then fate delivered us the perfect stage. Veronica announced she would be hosting a lavish Easter dinner at my mother's house. Guests, neighbors, business partners, everyone would be there. Rachel smiled when I told her. Then that's where we strike. While they gloat in front of everyone, the filings will go public. By the time dessert is served, their reputation will be ashes. But just as the plan settled into place, an unexpected complication arrived. A letter from the bank, notifying me of a large attempted withdrawal from one of my father's trusts. The signature looked eerily familiar. It was mine, only I had never signed it. The forged withdrawal notice sat on Rachel's desk like a fresh wound. My name signed in ink I had never touched. The loops mimicked my handwriting too well, almost perfect. If the bank believed it, they could have drained the trust before we even reached court. Rachel's jaw tightened as she studied it. They're desperate, she said. And desperation makes people sloppy. But this also means they know you're stronger than they thought. They're trying to strike first. I swallowed hard. Can it damage us? Not if we move quickly. I've already contacted the bank. We'll have forensic experts confirm it's a forgery. Once verified, it becomes our strongest weapon yet. I exhaled, but unease still curled in my stomach. My family wasn't just cruel, they were reckless. And reckless people can be dangerous. Days blurred into preparations. Rachel filed motions, Grace double-checked timelines, Clara signed affidavits. Still, I played my role. To my family, I remained the quiet sister. Present but irrelevant. Veronica called once, her voice sugary. Don't bother with Easter dinner, Brenda. Just bring something simple. Rolls, maybe. I smiled into the phone, though my hands clenched. Of course. Inside, I knew Easter would not end with rolls. The day arrived. My mother's house gleamed, every corner polished for the guests. Neighbors and business partners flowed through the doors in pressed suits and bright dresses. Veronica floated around the room like a queen, her jewels catching the light. My brother laughed loudly at every joke, shaking hands as if he owned the place. And me? I stood in the kitchen, arranging bread on a tray, just as they expected. Invisible. But as I slipped into the dining room with the rolls, I caught sight of Rachel through the window. She stood across the street, phone in hand, nodding once to signal me. The filings had gone public. Judges, reporters, and even some of the guests' own phones were buzzing with the news. Forged signatures, financial fraud, estate manipulation. The plan was unfolding exactly as we had rehearsed. And then the pivot came. Halfway through dinner, as my family raised glasses to toast Veronica's generosity, my brother's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, froze, then turned pale. His fork clattered onto the plate. What is it? Veronica asked, frowning. He shoved the phone into her hands. She read, her face draining of color. The headline flashed bright on the screen. Whitmore estate dispute. Allegations of forgery and fraud filed against family heirs. Gasps spread around the table as other guests checked their own phones. Murmurs rippled. Neighbors exchanged glances. Daniel's smug smile faltered. My mother's hand trembled as she set down her glass. Veronica slammed the phone down. This is nonsense. Lies. But Rachel had timed it perfectly. Notifications continued to flood the room. Emails, news alerts, even official court postings. The filings were real, stamped undeniable. My brother stammered. She must have planted this. A voice from the end of the table cut him off. It was Mr. Harlan, one of my father's oldest friends, his face stern. Planted? The filings include certified deeds and notarized wills. These are not lies, young man. These are facts. Silence pressed heavy across the table. For the first time in years, every eye turned toward me. Not as background, not as a burden, as the center. I set the breadbasket down carefully, my heart pounding but my face calm. I told you gifts weren't about size, I said softly. They're about truth. And tonight you're unwrapping the truth. The room erupted into chaos. Veronica's protests. My brothers shouting. Guests whispering as they excused themselves, unwilling to sit in scandal. My mother's face frozen in a mask of shock. The plan had worked, but it had also drawn every weapon to the surface. Because as the dinner collapsed into shouting and slammed doors, Rachel's message lit up my phone. They're coming after you harder now. Be careful, Brenda. Tonight was just the beginning. The dining room, moments before filled with polished laughter, had descended into chaos. Forks clattered, glasses tipped, and the air reeked of panic. My brother barked denials across the table. Veronica's voice rose in shrill protests, and my mother sat rigid, her eyes darting between us as though searching for a way to undo what was already unraveling. I remained still, silent, watching. Rachel's plan had worked, but the real reveal still rested in my hands. I reached into my purse and pulled out a slim folder, the one I had guarded for months. The room quieted slightly as I set it on the table, the soft thud of its weight cutting through their noise. This, I said calmly, is my father's will. The real one. The one you pretended did not exist. Gasps rippled. Mr. Harlan, seated near the end of the table, leaned forward eagerly. May I? I slid the folder to him. His old hands trembled slightly as he flipped through the pages. Notarized, he murmured, pointing to the seal. Properly witnessed. It names Brenda directly. He looked up, his eyes sharp. This is no fabrication. This is truth. Veronica surged to her feet, her face blotched red. She forged it. She's the liar here. I met her fury with calm. Really? Then why does the handwriting expert certification sit right there on page 3? She faltered. Eyes dropped to the document. The neat lines of official verification left no space for denial. My brother slammed his fist on the table. She's unstable. You can't trust her. Rachel's timing, as always, was impeccable. My phone buzzed, and when I tapped the screen, the sound of his own voice filled the room. The recording echoed. Brenda won't be able to contribute. She barely keeps herself afloat. We'll handle the estate without her. The words bounced against the walls, undeniable. Several guests gasped. My brother's face drained of color as his own betrayal betrayed him. And here, I continued, sliding another sheet across the table, is the bank's forensic report on the withdrawal attempt. That signature isn't mine. It's traced. Daniel, perhaps you should explain why your initials appear in the margin. The color left Daniel's face, his smug grin collapsing. My sister's husband stammered. It's not what it looks like. But no one listened. Guests were already whispering. Phones buzzing again as reporters posted updates in real time. Veronica's jewels glittered like mockery against her flushed skin. My brother's shoulders slumped under the weight of his exposed greed. Finally, I turned to my mother. She had said little, but her silence had been heavier than any insult. I placed the scarf, the green cashmere scarf she had mocked, gently in front of her. You laughed at this because it looked small, I said softly. But this scarf cost me nights of overtime. Every stitch was chosen with care. You mocked my heart because you thought I had nothing else. But I do. I have this house, these papers, and the truth. And none of you can take it. The silence that followed was crushing. Even Veronica couldn't speak. Mr. Harlan stood then, his voice clear. I was Samuel's friend for 40 years. He trusted Brenda. Tonight I see why. Shame on the rest of you. The blow landed harder than anything I could have said. My family's reputation cracked like thin ice, shattering under the weight of witnesses and evidence. I looked around the table, my voice steady. This dinner was supposed to celebrate your control. Instead, it revealed your lies. From this night forward, the truth belongs to me. And as the guests hurried out, scandal burning behind them, my mother whispered the words I never expected. Brenda, please. Don't destroy us completely. The dining room that had once glowed with warmth and laughter now pulsed with tension so heavy it seemed to bend the walls inward. The chandelier light felt harsh, unforgiving, as if even the room itself demanded truth. My mother's whisper still hung in the air. Brenda, please. Don't destroy us completely. For a moment I studied her face. Her features, once regal and composed, were creased with fear. Not regret. Not apology. Fear. She wasn't sorry for mocking me. She wasn't sorry for letting them plan my erasure. She was only sorry the curtain had fallen in public. The guests stirred uneasily. Some rose from their seats, muttering awkward farewells. Others lingered, whispering, phones in hand as updates from reporters spread faster than the candlelight. Forgery, fraud, inheritance scandal, I heard one voice murmur. Veronica's jewels clinked as she clutched at them, her face pale. Mom, say something. Tell them it's a mistake. But my mother sat silent. Her eyes had shifted from me to the papers, to the seals and stamps that were stronger than denial. My brother finally found his voice. Brenda, you've twisted this. You waited, plotting just to humiliate us. How could you do this to your own family? I turned toward him slowly. Family? You called me a burden. You tried to cut me out of my father's legacy. You filed papers to brand me unfit. You forged my name. Don't you dare speak of family. His lips pressed into a thin line. Around him, even his allies began to edge away, unwilling to be linked to his downfall. Grace, who had slipped in quietly after the reveal, stepped closer to me now. Her voice was low but clear. You don't need to explain yourself anymore, Brenda. They exposed themselves. Veronica lunged for the folder, desperation breaking her polished facade. This is mine. The house, the accounts, they belong to us, not her. Rachel appeared then, entering through the side door, her heels clicking against the marble. Calm, collected, immovable. She picked up the folder before Veronica's hands could touch it. These documents are secured with the court already, she said. Seizing them here changes nothing. The filings are public. The law has spoken. The room fell utterly silent. For the first time I allowed myself to breathe. Then the whispers began to turn louder. A neighbor's voice carried, I can't believe they tried to erase her. Another followed, I'll never look at them the same again. The shame spread across my family like wildfire. My brother's posture sagged. Veronica's mascara streaked as tears cut through her fury. Even Daniel avoided my eyes, his smugness reduced to nothing. And then my mother rose slowly, gripping the edge of the table. Brenda, she said, her voice trembling, you've made your point. But these people, our friends, our community, must not see us torn apart like this. I held her gaze. They saw you mock me. They saw you erase me. Now they will see the truth. That is not my shame, it's yours. Her eyes flashed, but she said nothing. The guests began leaving in earnest now, their goodbyes sharp, their faces cold. Each departing figure was another nail in the coffin of my family's reputation. By the time the last door closed, only the four of them remained. My mother, my brother, Veronica, and Daniel. The silence pressed hard. Veronica collapsed into her chair, sobbing quietly. My brother poured himself another drink with shaking hands. My mother stared at the fire, lost in thought. Rachel placed a hand on my shoulder. It's done, she murmured. The world has seen. They can't recover from this. I nodded, though part of me knew the fallout was only beginning. By morning the headlines would spread wider. Calls from lawyers and banks would come. Neighbors would turn cold. And the very people who had mocked my scarf would be the ones mocked themselves, whispered about behind closed doors. For the first time in years I didn't feel small. I felt seen. And later that night, when I finally returned to my apartment, exhausted but steady, I found an envelope taped to my door. My name scrawled across it. Inside a single line. This isn't over. You'll regret what you did. The sun rose the next morning, but the world I woke to was no longer the same. My phone buzzed nonstop, vibrating against the nightstand until it finally slid to the floor. When I picked it up, the screen was flooded with notifications. Missed calls, unread messages, news alerts. The headlines were everywhere. Inheritance scandal rocks Whitmore family. Forgery allegations exposed during holiday dinner. Clips from the Easter night circulated across every platform. Veronica lunging at the folder, my brother shouting, my calm words standing like a wall against their noise. Some of the footage had been captured by guests. One video of me saying, "It's not my shame, it's yours," had already been viewed more than 2 million times. The comments ranged from shock to praise. She stood up for herself. Finally, someone exposing greed for what it is. That's the definition of strength. I sat in my kitchen, coffee untouched, staring at the screen as my family's names trended for all the wrong reasons. Rachel called. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the satisfaction beneath it. The bank confirmed the forged withdrawal is fraudulent. They'll testify if needed. The court filings are gaining attention. Your family won't be able to sweep this under the rug. Grace arrived minutes later carrying newspapers. She spread them across my table. Images of Veronica's tear-streaked face, my brother's angry glare, my calm expression holding the room. Headlines branded them greedy, reckless, shameless. My name for once was not whispered. It was printed in bold letters. Still, the envelope from the night before gnawed at me. The words, "This isn't over. You'll regret what you did," echoed like a shadow behind every headline. "Do you think it was Veronica?" I asked. Grace frowned. "Could be her. Or your brother. Or even your mother. They're cornered animals now, Brenda. Desperate. But remember, desperation makes mistakes." That afternoon the calls began. Neighbors who had once overlooked me reached out with murmured support. Former family friends sent texts like, "We never knew the truth. We're on your side." Even distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years messaged their disbelief. But the most shocking call came from my mother. Her voice was strained, her tone brittle. "Brenda, you've humiliated us. Do you know what you've done?" I closed my eyes, breathing deeply before answering. "I didn't humiliate you. You did that yourselves. I only showed the truth." For the first time her voice broke. "You think you've won, but families don't recover from this. Your name is linked to ours whether you like it or not." I let the silence stretch. Then I answered firm and clear. "Then the world will see me as the daughter who refused to be erased. Not as the woman who mocked her own blood." She hung up without another word. By evening the scandal had reached new heights. The bank confirmed legal actions against unauthorized attempts on the trust. Reporters camped outside my mother's home, their cameras flashing as Veronica and my brother tried to sneak out. Neighbors turned their backs, whispers chasing them down the street. And me? I sat in my small apartment, the same walls they had mocked, and realized those walls now contained something stronger than wealth. They contained freedom. The scarf still lay folded on my couch, the green fabric soft under my fingertips. Once it had been the symbol of my shame. Now it was the symbol of their blindness. They had mocked the small thing, not realizing the power behind it. Rachel called again before nightfall. "The judge has scheduled a hearing. They'll face consequences, Brenda. This isn't just social humiliation. It's legal. And you'll walk in with the truth on your side." I nodded, staring out the window at the city lights blinking awake. For years they had called me nothing. Now the world knew my name. But as I turned off the lamp, my phone buzzed once more. This time it wasn't a threat. It was an email from an unknown sender. The subject line read, "There's more you don't know about your father's estate." The courtroom was colder than I expected. Marble walls echoed every whisper, every shuffle of paper, every cough. I sat beside Rachel, my binder on my lap, the scarf folded neatly inside. It was not a shield anymore, it was a reminder. My brother sat across from me, his face drawn, his lawyer whispering frantically in his ear. Veronica avoided my eyes, her jewels gone, her hands trembling as she twisted her wedding ring. Even Daniel looked broken, his once smug smile erased. And my mother, she sat rigid, her expression carved in stone, a queen without her crown. The judge entered, gavel striking once. Silence fell like a curtain. Rachel rose, presenting the evidence with the calm precision that had become her signature. The notarized will, the forensic reports, the recorded conversations, all laid out in order, a structure too solid to deny. Clara and Grace gave their testimonies, their voices steady, confirming every word. My brother's lawyer tried to argue instability, but Rachel cut him down with a simple phrase. Instability does not create $3 million in assets managed carefully for over a decade. The judge leaned forward, eyes sharp. Forgery, fraud, deception. These are not mistakes. They are deliberate acts. The estate remains in Brenda Whitmore's name. Any attempts to alter that are null and void. His gavel struck again. Further action may be pursued for damages. Gasps echoed. My brother slumped, defeated. Veronica covered her face. My mother's lips pressed tight, but she did not speak. As the room emptied, I remained seated for a moment, letting the weight of the words settle. Not just the legal victory but the vindication. For years they had mocked me. For years I had stayed silent. But silence was never weakness. It was patience. Outside the cameras waited. Reporters shouted questions, microphones thrust forward. Brenda, how do you feel after the verdict? What will you do next? I stepped into the flashing lights, shoulders back, voice clear. I feel free. They mocked me for a scarf, for what looked small. But small things grow. Proof grows. And truth always rises. My father trusted me, and today his trust was honored. I want anyone watching to know, if you are silenced, if you are mocked, hold on. Patience and truth can turn humiliation into justice. The crowd fell silent for a moment. And then the cameras clicked faster, capturing not just the scandal but the strength. That night I returned home. My apartment was still small, still modest, but it no longer felt like a cage. It felt like mine, untouched by their contempt. I unfolded the scarf, draping it over the back of my chair. It was no longer a symbol of their laughter. It was a symbol of my resilience. I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window, the city lights glowing. For the first time in years, I felt not just vindicated but whole. They had tried to erase me, but in their cruelty, they had written my name louder than ever. And as I stared out into the night, I whispered the words my father once told me. It's not the size of the gift. It's the size of the heart. This time I finally believed him.